Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another episode here on Gladiator Disc Golf. Today is part 2 to my flight numbers video and what exactly they mean. Today we're going to talk about glide, turn, and fade. If you're brand new to the channel, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming and stopping by. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Alrighty guys, let's talk about these final 3 flight numbers. Alrighty, so that second flight number is glide. And glide is really simple. It's how well a disc can hold air under its lid, basically, okay? And part of the effect here is definitely the rim height. A shallower disc, okay, something like a Firebird, which is only 3 glide, is not going to hold air under the disc as well as a Destroyer. And a putter, of course, is going to hold the air under the disc really, really well because it's taller. And so you'll see that a lot of putters have really, really good glide. So glide is also impacted by the nose of the disc. So something like the Kastaplast Berg only has I think a 1 glide. And even though it's pretty tall, it's such a blunt nose, it doesn't let air get under it. Whereas something like an Aviar has a more rounded nose, so air can kind of fill up under it and lift that disc. And drivers are affected by this as well, based on the wing shape and how it deals with all that, and how it lets air get under the disc to lift it up. Now, glide is on a rating of 1 to 7, 1 being the least amount of glide, 7 being the most amount of glide. Now, just like speed, there's no specification for what makes a disc a glide rating of 1 or a glide rating of 7. So companies just kind of guess. Okay, it's kind of hard to say what disc glides more because, to be truthfully honest, if we look at Drew Gibson's videos of him crushing those putters that Infinite Disc sent him, like the top 20 selling putters, he made some of those putters fly like 500 feet. I mean, that sounds like pretty good glide to me. But, you know, some of us mere mortals go and throw a putter and we're lucky if we can get it to 250 or 300. So, I mean, there is the essence that glide is important, but it's also how well you can control the disc and get it to fly into the air without losing speed and get the wind to just carry it and carry it. So a disc may have a glide rating of 5, 6, or even 7, but if you can't really capitalize and use that glide to your advantage, you may not really be seeing the effects of it. One thing that I have found with glide is that 5 glide really tends to be the most common glide rating for popular discs and for discs that really fly the best. Innova Eagle has a 5 glide rating, the Wraith, the Destroyer, okay, Paul McBeth's Zeus and Hades. The Hades might be 6 rating, but pretty close to 5, or maybe that's the Thrasher that has 6. Now I'm just thinking out loud. But the Zeus definitely has a 5 rating. Other discs that are pretty close with only maybe a 4 rating, you have Discmania PD2, which is 12404, so that disc has pretty good glide. And I mean, there's so many other choices out there. The Innova Thunderbird is 9502. The Discmania FD is 7.5, maybe 6, minus 1.1. So we're seeing that all these discs are kind of fluctuating between a 4 and 6 range, and that's kind of the sweet spot where the glide is going to let the disc do what it does best, whether it's turn and then fade, or just turn or just fade. That glide is really going to help it. Now, something that I have noticed on a lot of discs is that the lower the glide, the more overstable the disc tends to be. I don't think I can think of a single disc that has low glide, like a 1 or 2 glide rating, and is super understable. And for some reason, with just the physics of it, for a disc to be nice and understable and really go to the right, it has to have enough glide to carry it that way. Whereas for a disc to really fade hard with the rotation of it, it doesn't really need glide to fade, but it needs glide to turn and fight against physics. So that's something to keep in mind when you are looking for discs, that when you're finding an understable disc, you're going to have a disc with great glide. So that's also going to help you with hyzer flips. So keep that in mind. The next thing I want to talk about is turn, and this is the third number on the 4-flight number system. And turn is a really important statistic. Now, turn goes from +1 to -5. +1 meaning that disc will never go right, it will only go left for right-hand backhand. And -5 means that disc will never go left, it's only going to go right, because it's just going to turn like crazy. And turn is a super important statistic to look at for beginners because you want an understable disc. So this is where we call a disc understable based on their flight number system. So a disc that's anywhere between -2 to -5, we would say is fairly stable to understable, especially when you get to the -4 and -5 rating. And this is basically how much the disc is going to go right and how quickly it goes right. So a destroyer, okay, my big sexy destroyer here, the destroyer has a -1 turn. So as this disc really flies and beats in, it's going to go to the right just a little bit. Okay, and it's going to be noticeable. You're going to see it go right, but then that 3 fade is going to make it come back to the left. Whereas if I was to throw a Roadrunner flat on the same line, the Roadrunner has a -4 turn rating, and so it's going to go way more left than the destroyer would, and maybe not even fade back with only its 1 fade. And so the turn that you see is super important in understanding how a disc works. Now, here's the thing. There's no perfect system for turn and glide, and coming up next for fade. So what one company says is a -4 turn might be a -5 for another company, or might be a -2 for another company, or based, really, if it's Innova, it takes a little while to beat in. So if you get a champion Roadrunner at -4 turn, it's not going to have -4 turn right out of the box. In fact, that thing might fade for a little while, almost like a Thunderbird, before it finally starts to beat in and really turn. Whereas the Thunderbird's going to continue to fly overstable even once you beat it in a couple months. So it's important to understand that the company you're buying from and sort of how their plastics beat in, and if it's out of the box understable. Now when it comes to disc golf flight numbers, everybody looks at 2 numbers first: speed and fade. Everybody wants to throw high-speed, overstable discs because for some reason it just makes us feel really good when we can get a 300-foot hyzer or a 350-foot hyzer. And that's not always what's best for us, but it's for some reason what we all want to do. Throw a high-speed, overstable disc. So that's why people look at speed and fade, but really those are the last 2 numbers that a beginner should be looking at. When it comes to fade, we're talking about how fast or how quickly a disc will go from flying straight and dumping left. Once again, right hand, backhand. When you throw it straight, how quickly it comes to the left. The rating here is for 0 to 5. So a 0 fade means it's not going to go right in theory. Whereas a 5 fade means it's going to go right as soon as possible. Might even go right out of your hands. So that might even go left right out of your hands, sorry. I throw a lot of forehands, so if I ever say right for fade, it's because my brain is automatically thinking forehands all of a sudden. But yeah, so how quickly it'll go left out of your hand. The closer to 0 you can get, that will be the best for you as a beginner, if you are a beginner. If you're not a beginner, you can certainly venture into 3, 4, and 5 fades, but just know that there's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to take some time to really get comfortable with the disc. That's basically it, guys. I mean, that's what the 3 final flight numbers mean. Make sure you watch part 1 where I talk about speed, but flight numbers are tricky, okay? They really, really are, and basically if there's one thing you get from this video, just know it's not a perfect system. There's going to be a learning curve. You're going to have to get familiar with the manufacturer and how they rate their discs, and you're also kind of just going to have to learn by trial by fire. I mean, you might get a disc that you think is going to be great for you, and then it turns out that it's not, and it's really frustrating. But there's no perfect system. The 4 flight number rating system is not watched and directed by the PDGA, and there's no reason for them to really be in charge of that. They got a lot of other things, and they're making sure that everyone's following the rules when it comes to manufacturing their discs. So the flight numbers system is really for the consumer. It's not for the producer whatsoever. For a long time, discs never had flight numbers written on them. You kind of just had to learn it as a stable, overstable, understable disc. That's why you see some discs, especially with Millennium, as LS, a long straight driver, or LF, a long fade driver. So it's kind of trial by fire. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it provided some answers for you guys as to what the heck these numbers even mean. I know it took me a little while to learn it. So I hope this helped clarify some of that to you, but I also hope it put into perspective for you that there is no perfect system out there, and that everything is going to be different with every disc you pick up. You can pick up 2 discs of the same plastic, of the same mold, and they could still fly a little differently. So that is all I have for you today, guys. I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And until next time, guys, have a great round.